Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fortitude. I am your host, Heather Kittleson, and I have my fantastic husband, Amos Kittleson.
Hello.
And our guests today are probably two of the most charismatic, beautiful people in the Sioux Falls area.
Oh, wow.
I have had the opportunity to meet them, I would say about 6-7 years ago. Travis and Jessica Remme, thank you so much for being here with Amos and I to speak about your journey.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
Yes.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So exciting.
So when we met, 6 years ago, it was at Referrals.
Yeah, so that would have been 2016. Yep.
At a referrals group. And there was something about Travis that I was drawn to because he's random. He's funny. He has a spirit and a sense of humor that's it's just good. It's just good. And then I met his beautiful bride a couple of years. Actually, I showed up to your benefit at Golf Addiction.
Yeah, that was the first time.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember you warning
It's all
Jessica
coming back to me now. Mm-hmm.
when she comes in, be ready. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
You warned her because when Heather comes in,
Yeah.
she comes in hot for a big old hug.
Yes.
Yep,
Yes.
he did.
I thought that was worth a warning.
It was. Mm-hmm. So thank you for embracing the hug that I gave you that day.
Yeah. We had good conversation that day, too.
There was a lot to talk about.
There was.
So you two have been on a journey that is in the past 2 years, 3. It's been 3 years since.
4.
It's been 4 years already.
Yeah.
Okay.
4.5, actually.
Okay. God, time goes by. So
Yeah.
because Evelyn, I was pregnant with Evie when we went and had coffee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There we go.
Well,
That's
I'd love to just jump in and have both of you and whoever wants to speak can start, whatever works for you too, and lead the conversation with our audience as to who you are. Tell us a little about where you reside, live, your kids, all this stuff that makes you who you are currently and today.
Cool. Can we include that we're living in an RV right now?
Yes, you can. I want it all.
Very good.
Yes.
Yeah. It's actually been kind of fun living in a camper. What would you rate it, 1 through 10, Jessica?
I think I'd rate it, probably an 8.
Okay, that's
solid
pretty good.
8.
All right. Maybe.
Yeah.
That's higher than I expected.
I mean,
That's great.
we can't.
That is higher than expected.
Yeah, I'm sleeping with one child, and he has to sleep on the opposite end of the camper because he doesn't fit on the bed
Okay.
And how many
with
weeks
me.
in?
So
12 nights, 4 to go.
Okay.
Yep.
Not that
Okay,
we're
so
counting.
it's a fixed time.
I'm a counter, though, you know,
Yeah.
so
Just counting down.
Yep.
counting up in this case.
So how did you end up in a camper?
Well, I'm glad that you asked about that. We sold our house, which was a God thing. You know, God's timing is never our timing. And we had talked about doing that and were approached and sold our
we
house.
didn't have our
and
house on the market.
Someone walked up to your door and asked.
Well,
There was no Keller Williams sign in our
No.
yard. Are they the big ones?
And we talked about moving for the last 2 years. And actually, where we're moving to, last summer we were pretty set on buying a lot.
Oh, so you're
Now
moving
there's a
to
house
Yeah.
right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where is your camp? You're in Rock Rapids.
Yeah.
Is where you live? Rock Rapids, Iowa.
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
You want to give her the address?
29 Alpine Drive, the big place. 29 Island Park Drive.
For our audience, please don't show up at the door.
Actually,
We won't be there by the time this airs.
That's the river address.
Yeah, that is the river
Yes.
address down by the river. Yeah.
So you're living in a camper down by the river with your two
right.
sons.
Yep.
And what are their names?
Braxton and Gavin.
Okay. And what do you both do for profession?
Go ahead.
Well, we have visiting angels, home care in Sioux Falls. And so I do that. I stepped away from hair. I did hair for 15 or so years, a little over 15 years. And stepped from behind the chair. And now I'm in the office. And I also run the Oaklyn Foundation, 501c3 nonprofit organization.
Which everyone that is listening is going to hear that into great detail in just a minute. Travis, what do you do?
I don't really have anything to do with visiting angels anymore, but I could, because I helped start that, and it was fun. And you do most of the work there now. I just pretend like I'm important with that.
Yep.
But you laughed at this earlier, so I'm not so sure. I'm kind of self-conscious about it now. But I'm a pastor at Rock Rapids United Methodist Church. Yeah.
I don't think it's funny at all.
Either did Jessica, just for the record.
So
she's ironic funny.
Beautiful that you're a pastor.
It is
Thank
beautiful,
you.
but he's
so
not
funny,
the man
though.
that I married at all. Yeah.
Because the man you married was what, Jess?
6'3", 220.
Still that.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's the big deal?
Let's go spiritually.
Well, and I always feel, anytime we talk about our story, I feel like my version and your version are just a little bit different.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's like us, too.
Because
Amos and I have the same.
You see things differently, from different perspective. So the man I married was not Christ-centered.
Mm-hmm.
Did not grow up going to church. Not what I thought I would marry. Thought I'd marry someone that wore cowboy boots, and he did. After we were married for a while, I got him to wear cowboy boots and do all the things he said he wouldn't do. But if you would have told me back then that he's going to be a pastor, I probably would have fallen over dead.
And if you all could see Travis, which we are going to take a selfie after this, but he's wearing a pink polo right now, which it looks good.
Thanks.
It does.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wore it specifically for this recording.
And a little bit that we only have like 7 outfits in our camper.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That will change soon.
Yeah, soon.
That'll be-
Yeah.
Your time is closing in.
Yeah.
But you will be in this beautiful new home. So 4.5 years ago, you have 2 beautiful little boys, and you are pregnant with your third. And explain a little bit. Your pregnancy was beautiful. So I want to get into your story and kind of just jump right in.
Yeah.
I'm just turn it over to you, Jess. Tell us about that.
So I actually am one of the very few that loves being pregnant. My pregnancies are always easy. I don't have the morning sickness. I was a little sick maybe with Gavin, but no, I feel I think the best when I'm pregnant. And my pregnancy with the third was no different than the other 2. We didn't know what we were having, so that we never find out. We always think that's one of the cool surprises that God gives you in life. And so we never find out. But yeah, we were set to have a perfect, healthy baby.
Because there was no signs.
None
That there was anything wrong.
I had an inkling at 30, I think it was like 34, 36 weeks, that something was wrong. Just this gut instinct. I felt very disconnected with my third pregnancy compared to the other 2. And at about 34, 36 weeks, I contacted my doctor, my OB, and just said, I just feel like something's wrong. And she's like, oh, no worries. Come in. We'll hook you up. And they did all the things and went in and did an ultrasound, and everything was perfect. In fact, the ultrasound tech said to me, like, here are your baby's organs. She went through everything. It was like the longest ultrasound ever. And now looking back, I'm like, why did she do that? Like, why did she go the extra mile for me in the middle of her day? Like, why did she do that? And I feel that was totally a God thing, because there was no way to detect what was going on beforehand. And that just showed that there was, we had the ultrasound. They pointed out every one of her organs. Everything was beautiful and fine. And they sent me home. And yeah, at 39 weeks. Yeah, I think so. We decided to induce because this
38.
baby was a little bit bigger than what the boys were. And so just for precautionary, my doctor was like, you know what, we're ready to go. Let's have this baby. Another blessing, because your brother was just leaving that next day for Florida.
To move to Florida.
To live.
That's right.
Yeah. And so that worked out the way it was supposed to as well. But
So he was able to be there at the hospital with y'all when it happened? Okay.
Yeah.
He's one of the very few that held Oaklyn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
you get there, you get induced. Mm-hmm.
And actually that morning, I think we had an argument of some sort. It was a stressful morning.
I don't remember that.
Oh, I do.
We did?
Yeah. And I drove to the hospital by myself. You had to bring the kids to school. And I think you had some stuff at Visiting Angels that you had to have get done.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was there like all ready to go. Had my hair all done and
this was different. This was the first time you were being induced. So it was a little bit of a different process. We weren't driving to the hospital with you having contractions or anything like that. So yes, there was not as much of a time element for me.
Yeah. No. So
I was induced with all of them but one. So that whole process is weird. You just like you
just show up.
You just show up and so
birth appointments. That's weird. So we're going to have your baby at 3 o'clock tomorrow.
Yeah. Does that work for your schedule?
Look, check your calendar.
Yeah. It's almost harder to wrap your head around that. Like you have a scheduled time to go push this baby out of your, and all of a sudden you're going to have another child,
Yeah.
So you have to versus if it's just happening, it happens.
Yep.
You don't have to think about it.
We have to react to these contractions that you're having. Yeah.
So it's ready, go time. This is more like, last a days ago.
That's exactly what the day was, because I remember that day specifically as it being fun, joyful. I was poking fun at you like I always do, and you were receiving it well, and we were having a great day because it was going to be a great day because we were about to have our third child, and number 1 and 2 went so perfect. And the doctor even said, this is going to be easy. Like it was just going to be a walk in the park. And we were walking around trying to get those contractions going, and we were talking about the signs on the wall and the maternity ward there, or whatever you call where you're, before you have the baby, labor and delivery. And it was just a great day. Really was. I remember that very specifically, that, it was just a joyous day. Yeah.
So the contractions kick in.
Yeah. Everything went really fast.
All of a sudden. Yeah.
Yeah. All of a sudden. That's how all my kids are born. Just all of a sudden. And I mean, it was so lighthearted to the point where our nurse, Abby, who is now a dear friend of mine, crazy how things work. She was like 36 weeks pregnant at the time. And so her and our doctor were like placing bets on how many pushes it would take.
Yeah, the one said 1 push and the other said 2.
Because Braxton, it was like 3. Out. Gavin was 2. Yeah, so they were all placing bets on... Yeah, that's how lighthearted things were.
Jess, you and I are a lot alike in that sense of our, like, because same pregnancy, deliveries.
I know, I always feel bad telling people that because I'm like, it's so easy.
There was a little element with Oaklyn that I was like concerned about having to deliver a baby in the car. So, part of this
that's the other reason they induced us.
That part of the reason, or part of it was like, okay, cool. At least I'm not going to have to worry about doing that because, it was somewhat close the other 2 times.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep. So you lead in to having all signs go green, light, like we're ready. But that's not what happened.
No. And I mean, it's so crazy when you look back at all the signs God had in place. And I think it's so important when you go through tragedy, when you go through something so significant in your life. I think it's really important to go back and look at how God had his hand. Look at the positives in all of the negative. It's so important. So my epidural came and I was like a 9, like they shouldn't have even given me one, but my doctor fought them. Nope. She needs one. You hear so often women don't get them, and they kept pushing. Nope. We're going to get her one. And I remember them telling me, like, I was waiting for it to kick in and they're like, can you hold off? And I was like, yep, I think I can. Thank goodness I did.
Yeah.
Because of all of the trauma that was to come. And so again, just a little.
Because they normally do not.
They do not.
After 8, usually, if you're dilated to an 8, sorry.
Nope.
You're going.
Yep.
Okay.
So something told me, just wait, just hold off. And so it was a good 3, they told me 3 to 4 minutes before it fully kicked in. And so once that did, we started pushing once, then twice. After the second push, our doctor was like, okay, I think we've got a shoulder that's stuck here. And so they do all of their things. That's scary from a mother's point of view. You look down, you're like, oh dear, what is she doing? But she was trying to position the baby a little bit better. And And then the words shoulder dystocia came out, and she said, I think that the baby's shoulders are just too broad for you to deliver. So it's a possibility we may have to break the clavicle bone. And so that right away runs through your head like, oh my gosh, my baby's going to be hurt. You just, so many different emotions go through. And I remember her saying, we've got a 5-minute window to get baby out, and Oaklyn was born after 3.5 minutes. It was so stressful at one point. She took her glasses off and flung them across the room. She was sweating. And
within seconds, the room was standing room only. It was an emergency at that point. Yeah. So we went from happy-go-lucky to full-blown OB emergency within
minutes.
Just people, literally minutes.
Pouring in the room. Different.
And we had no idea. Well, at least I had no idea what was going on, and thought I sorted it from what she was saying, but
Yeah. So Oaklyn was born. We didn't even know what we had. She was delivered. They brought her over to the warmer, and no cry for, it seemed like 10 minutes. I'm sure it wasn't that long, but it was a decent amount of time. Got to hear her cry, and I think it was then where we were like, what did we have? We don't even know what we had. And we knew things still probably weren't great. They were wanting to wheel her off to the NICU, and our doctor actually said, no, we have to take a family picture. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. And I had been crying, because your baby's not breathing. And they bring her over, and we're both just on cloud 9. We just had a little girl. We had 2 boys,
yeah.
This is awesome. Looking back at that picture, you really can see she was very sick. She was so sick. And you could tell the NICU was not okay with them taking that picture, but thank goodness she pushed for that. That's the only picture we have with her life, the only one. Aww. And so
she knew.
Do you think she knew?
Yeah. Oh, well, I don't know. She didn't know that things were that bad, because when they wheeled her off, they told me, this happens, stuff like this happens. Shoulder dystocia is not uncommon. They just are, just going to make sure she's all right. Check her out.
Yeah, within the window. So I don't think there was any reason to be completely alarmed at that point. Plus, I think there was a little element of they didn't know what was. I'm not saying they didn't know what was going on, but it all happened so fast.
Yeah. And we didn't know that I was concerned. I kept texting him, do not let them feed her formula. I want to nurse her. Don't let them feed her. And little did I know on the other end.
Well, I was the one that went to the NICU room with her, and things started off kind of okay, and it was kind of the thought of, well, lots of people's babies go to the NICU and they're all fine, so there was still no reason to really freak out. But while I was there by myself, it just kind of became increasingly tense, and I don't know, 15, 20 minutes afterwards, I noticed more people coming in there, and her coloring wasn't, I ain't no doctor, but I could tell her coloring wasn't great. And they kept pushing on her skin and watching to see the color come back, looking for her perfusion. That was the word I heard. And one of the nurses came up to me around that time. It was the nurse practitioner, and she said, your baby's very sick. We're really worried about your baby. And at that point was the moment when, I can still remember that exact, it was yesterday, when I realized that this is bad. This is bad. And so then I have the dilemma of Jessica has no idea how serious things are, because some of the stuff she's texting me, I still have those messages. They're really painful to look at, but I've got them, of excitement and should we tell my family, whatever. What do I do? What do I do? Because I can't freak her out. I don't know how serious it sounds really serious. She's getting fixed up. She's getting the aftercare that she's got to get. So what am I supposed to do at this point? It was very difficult. So
Travis, you mentioned to me that when you were standing there looking in the window of the NICU, and you were looking at your baby girl, there was another guy that came up and stood next to you, or was in passing. Yeah. And he said something that's jolted you into almost more of a panic. Or there was something he said. Yeah,
well, there's a couple things that you're uncovering there. And number one was, so Jessica's still getting fixed up, and things escalate pretty quickly. And I don't remember, because everything's kind of a blur, but within minutes, they one of the beepers on their machine was going off, and then it was standing room only, and they told me to get out. And, at that time, I mean, it's hard to keep your cool at that point. So I began pacing up and down the hall and praying out loud, which is not something I was really used to doing at that point, and hanging on nurses and, just kind of acting frantic, I guess. And around that time, I think I kind of came back to my composure and came to see what was going on. And they said, should we start chest compressions? And then, then I knew that we just went from really bad to the worst day of our life, probably. And Jessica still has no idea what's going on. And around that, I think what you're getting at is around that time, Jessica was still not over there yet. Maybe she was. Again, all that stuff's kind of a blur. Yet. I don't think you were, though, but things are bad. The room's standing room only. They just called out for chest compressions. They're giving our newborn baby CPR. This can't be happening. This cannot be happening. The room adjacent to us was filled with another family. And a guy comes around the corner and looks at the chaos, and I can still remember that also. I can almost see him panic again, even though I'm in the midst of my own chaos. I think totally, looking back at it at this point, it was a God thing that I even saw this and was able to recognize what this guy was feeling. And he came around the corner, he took a deep breath, and he looked at the room and realized it wasn't his room. And he said, "Oh, thank God that's not my room." And I heard that. And even at the time, I remember thinking, how could he say that? This is my room. And my life is falling apart in front of my eyes right now. And it wasn't till later. I mean, I remember not being mad, but just being like, really? But it passed. He went in his room, and, I was back focused on what I needed to be focused on. But it wasn't until I went back through those events and kind of thought about that, wow, okay, it wasn't his room. But that means that the previous night or the previous week, that was his room. And that feeling was very real for him. And, there's a lot of things that come to mind there. You just never know what somebody else is going through. And similar with me, he had, even though it wasn't the right time for that, but he had been through a traumatic experience the day or two before. So, I guess the quick thing there is we never know what somebody else is walking through. Yeah. We can't, judge.
Yeah. Be gentle.
Yeah. Be gentle. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So after they start doing CPR on sweet little Oakland, what was the next? Because didn't they have to take her out? Didn't they put her into surgery? Yeah.
So about that time is when I went to get, and this could be hours. So I went to go get Jessica per the doctor's advice, because I think they knew how serious it was. Yeah, he came with. Yep. Yeah. Yep. We went, I should have said. Yeah. And got you up to speed on, this isn't going to be the story we were hoping to be able to tell everybody.
Travis, what was that like to deliver that message to your bride?
I don't think you actually said anything.
The doctor did?
Yeah.
You both walked in, and he just looked at me and just said, your little girl is very sick, and we don't know what's wrong with her, and you need to come immediately. Yeah. So they put me in a wheelchair, wheeled me up there. Wheeling up to those glass doors it's so painful, because part of me was like, I take it back. I don't want to be induced anymore. Let's go back. I'll just wait. And, maybe things will be different if we just wait. Things were perfect. Mm-hmm. Like, how could this happen? Like, what just happened? Mm-hmm. And so after, they did everything. They did every test, ultrasound. Yeah. Every video, everything. They have fancy gadgets from the outside to try to figure out what was wrong with her, because she was white as a ghost, and they were just giving her blood transfusion after blood transfusion, just pumping it in constantly, and couldn't figure out why she was still white with there was just no life in her. Mm-hmm. And so they decided to open her up to do exploratory surgery, which is not something that ever happens. They said it was baby.
They said it was the first time at the time that they had ever opened up a baby for exploratory surgery. So this is open heart surgery. They've done that kind of stuff before, but just to find out what's going on. Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they open her up and find this hemangioma on her liver that ruptured due to the pressure of being born. So with her shoulder dystocia, they had to use external force on my belly to push her out, and that's what ruptured it.
Oh, man.
So her heart stopped for an extensive amount of time.
Yeah, there was a couple different times
extensive on the operating table. She was too ill to remove it, so they patched it, thinking it would just buy them some time. Got her back to the NICU. I mean, the doctor came and talked to us and was like, it's a miracle that she made it through. But I think we're not in the clear, but
he called us all together, and I thought we were going to have our, this is going to turn out okay moment.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, he even said, like, if you want to go grab something to eat, go with your boys up to, they gave the boys a nice room to stay in.
Or something like that.
Yep. And it wasn't more than 40 minutes maybe after that.
My phone had been dead for a long time, and people were and I was like, I got to go outside and get my phone charger. I know this is stupid, but at this point people want to know what's going on. And so I went to get my phone charger, and I came back. That's how fast it was.
Okay.
We maybe chatted for a couple minutes before that.
They wheeled me up to the room with the boys.
I was met at the door with the NICU nurse, and she said, you got to get back up here. It's not good. So that's how quick it went back to bad.
So they brought us up there and said that her patch had broken. So at that point, they could continue on with what they were doing with the blood transfusions. But it just, as they put it in, it just kept coming out. And so she was just getting bigger and bigger. And honestly, at that point, we knew that it was time that we couldn't continue to let her suffer. And
there wasn't anything else that could be done.
No, there was nothing else they could do. So I always say it's like the hardest thing I'll ever do in my life, yet the most beautiful thing. I got to hand my daughter over to Jesus. And so it was pretty awesome. I got to hold her for the first time, and literally they put her in my arms, and she passed away right then. So,
oh man.
Yeah.
The picture, and I'll post this in the notes and make sure that our audience can see it, but the picture of you holding her and giving her a kiss is so precious. And was it in that moment?
So those pictures, they do a really good job up at the hospital, and I'm sure, there's people who don't think so, but for us, we were blessed to have a photographer be there and come in and take some pictures, and our boys got to be present for that. And so after she passed away, a pivotal moment, I guess, for us, her neonatologist, who is forever a big part of our life. He's an incredible man. He retired about a year after Oaklyn passed away, but he came into the room. So that night was, such a blur, because she passed away and I was exhausted. It was the middle of the night, 12:30, 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
But yet I didn't want to miss out. My time was going to be cut short with her. So I didn't want to miss a minute. So I made myself stay awake and just stare at her and touch her and kiss her and all the things. And that early next morning, her neonatologist came in and he just said to me that, he said, this is something I don't tell a lot of people, but my wife and I lost a baby. And he said it was our first. And he said they were just newly married, and he said that loss is what pushed him into neonatology. And he said, I just know God's going to use this. He's going to do something good with it.
Oh, yeah.
And
we're going to talk about that in a second. Yeah.
So I had a lot of great people up there.
Well, that little piece was a huge part of
it was a pivotal moment.
Even though it was really, really fresh, like that stuck with us, that he did that, because we could tell that wasn't something that he always did. And I know that listening to the story is probably painful for a lot of people, but there's so much value in telling your story, our stories.
Yes, it is.
And I think that's probably why you're having us do this. But yeah, it's
hence the podcast.
Yeah, for sure. So, and that was illustrated by him coming into us.
He didn't have to.
Yeah.
The crazy thing, I actually did. So a lot of the nurses up in the NICU, I did their hair. I'd known them for years, and they had worked with him their whole career, and they had no idea. So that told you, he was led by
He
the
was
Holy
led to share
Spirit
that.
to share that with me.
Wow. And that planted a seed for you guys.
Because when I got back home, all I kept thinking was he was okay. He was okay.
He made it through.
He made it.
Yeah.
He made it through.
He
losing
made
a
it.
child.
I'm going to be okay too, eventually. Yeah.
And Travis, so you guys have been married for what, 5 years at this time?
8 years, 7.5 if we're being technical.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
And so you've got 7.5 years
Yep.
of being the spiritual leader of the house and growing these protectionary mechanisms for your family. And I really resonate with what you went through in that moment where you're learning what's going on and you're going, well, do I tell my wife? What do I do? And I need to stay here to get information, but she's over there and she's happy, and you're torn in two different directions.
Yeah, for sure.
And that time goes by so fast. So the kind of decision is kind of sorted out for you.
Yes.
But now you've got this long journey ahead of you. And what are you thinking? What's getting you through in that first, say, 12 hours? What's getting you through, and what's forming your decisions?
Man, that's a good question. Looking back at that time, I don't know that I would have been able to. I don't know that 4.5 years later I can still answer that question, because my faith, I had some faith, but it wasn't real strong at that point. I wasn't doing a very good job probably of spiritually leading my house at that point. So there wasn't a whole lot of a structure at that point in my life, but. I think the doctor that shared that information with us was probably really, really key. Even just talking with you guys, that was a huge deal. And so then the other thing that I know that I thought, and again, I don't know if it was a day or the next week or whatever, but okay, so there's nothing we can do to bring her back. There's things in our life that are outside of our control, and a lot of people can't let those things go. And it wasn't easy, but I realized that, okay, so we can dwell on this terrible event for the rest of our lives and have it ruin us, or we can slowly pick up the broken pieces and put them back together. Now, it was definitely not that clear, but that was sort of, I think, the direction that I was leaning and realizing that this happened and we're going to have to do something about it to survive. I mean, I know maybe people won't like me saying it like that, but there wasn't anything that could have been done otherwise. And, I had to figure something out.
So in this way, do you feel like it was natural for you to stand up and say, this is a challenge, right? There's something ahead of you and you can either rise to the occasion or you can sink into a dark hole yourself.
Yes.
And I get just from your personality that you rise to the occasion. Would you say so? Or was there something that was really?
I was going to say now.
I've been in dark places in my life, and 2017 wasn't exactly a great year for me, and so I feel like I was just coming off of a difficult season in my life, and there was probably the right things at the right times, and I feel very blessed to have gotten through. And when I say I'm talking about me, my whole family, but specifically me, that I had. Whatever it was obviously not me doing this, but whatever led me to be able to get through those first few days. Man, I don't know. I wish I could explain it better, but it was the Holy Spirit, but I didn't know it at the time.
That's a pretty
I
good
really
explanation.
didn't. Yeah. It really
I'll take that.
need we anymore. But the night that Oaklyn was having her surgery and I took my family and my in-laws. I think my own family was there at the time too.
This is what I was just wanting. I was like, I want to talk.
You want to tell the story? Go ahead.
Well, no, for me, a big moment, for me personally, and you don't see it right away, but a moment that it was almost like a light switch. When I looked at my husband differently was when we were in the midst of this, worst time of our life. And he gathered our family around and he prayed for us. He had never done that before.
I don't think I'd ever prayed out loud.
Ever.
Maybe like one time.
Ever. In the 7.5 years you were married.
No, we didn't pray as a family. We didn't. I mean, I know I shouldn't be admitting that, but that's
no, but you should be admitting
Yes, you
that.
should. Yes, you
I
should.
know. I'm tonguing it a little bit, like pastors aren't supposed to admit, I'm saying. But I was not. That's what I meant when I said I was not a great spiritual leader of my household. But there was enough faith or whatever it was that led me to take that step that we can't fix this, but maybe God can. And God didn't fix it the way that maybe we wanted to that night, but he's certainly shown us a lot of beauty through faith.
Yeah. And through your story, you guys have, I mean, it's just gotten better and better and better.
But he completely changed, though. I mean, when we left the hospital, you've never been like really selfish, maybe a little bit.
Thanks.
But I mean, like when we went home, you were no longer selfish at all. And he was the rock and the foundation, everything that I needed. I mean, you never once wavered in your support for me. You never once let my really bad days like ruin us. I don't know. You were that rock that I needed, but I think that all began with that praying. Like he was a different man from there forward.
I did not like the alternatives. You know, I knew that we were in big trouble if something didn't get done. And I don't think I could have put it into the thoughts that I would like to have now, but like I knew something different. This required a different approach. And I wish I would have said that I just cracked open my Bible and started reading it. It wasn't quite that simple. This was a circumstance we've never seen before.
Yeah, for sure. But I think we also knew as a couple, I did anyway, if we were going to continue on the way that we were before Oaklyn, we would not make it.
Yeah.
Period. So it's not like we like all of a sudden said, we need to have a meeting of the minds and we need to decide if we're going to, like, we just both knew, like, we cannot continue on the way that we were.
Yeah.
Because we were we were headed straight for divorce.
And in this world, there are so many things that you can turn to. Drugs, alcohol, pornography, things like that.
Yeah.
And I get the sense that there are many families where that does go.
Oh, for sure.
Can you speak to the families? Can you speak to the men listening who have gone through something similar and they're feeling convicted? They feel like they didn't make those right decisions in those first hours. Can you speak to them and give them some encouragement?
Yeah. Again, I don't know how good I'll be with my words, but I would say that hope is never far off. It's never too late. And I know in those situations, it's easy to lean into what we've always done, what makes us comfortable.
Earthly sin.
Earthly sin. Because we want to do something that's going to take away the pain. And I think some of that is that men these days have forgotten, or maybe we don't know what it's like to suffer, that life is hard and we're going to have to go through difficult things, and relying on the things that have gotten us into the suffering, that have gotten us this far, aren't going to work anymore. And we're going to have to make a decision at some point. And I know that that's really difficult for people because what we have been doing feels good or makes us feel better, or it's an escape for us or whatever. But
for a short time.
It's always temporary, it ends up leading to more suffering. So,
yes. So your marriage was fine. It was fine. You were in a marriage for 7.5 years. You had 2 boys.
No, it wasn't fine.
It wasn't fine.
Yeah.
But when I should say,
by the world standards, it was fine.
Yes,
okay.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
like
that's
from
fair.
an earthly standpoint, it's like, we're kind of going through the motions.
Yeah.
But not having the resources or the tools to understand how incredible a marriage can be if you don't have all that. If you don't have something that brings you together, like what you've experienced. Because what I've heard you guys say over and over is like, you loved each other, you got married, and you're living your life. And this profound experience that you went through, which is true. I mean, that's a tragedy. It's one of the hardest things. And people who've lost a child, there's many people that still, years, 11, 12, 13, 15 years later are still in the mourning process and cannot get out, cannot release, and it's because in talking with some of those people, they don't have the resources or the community or the people that have wrapped their arms around them and said, we can do this. You can get out of this.
Right.
And leading by faith, leading with the truth, the biblical truth of like how Christ-centered, because your relationship went from earthly fine to, looking at the two of you across the table right now, I'm going like,
but this is 4.5 years later.
Yeah. It's taken a lot of work.
The first couple of years were really, really difficult. And I don't think our marriage was better right away. It's not like it was just fixed immediately. It was a process. And, I think I was scared. I don't know if I can speak for you on this, but I was scared enough of what could happen. And we heard enough of this ruined my family, and we don't want that to happen to you. So we had a support system in place for sure, or that, came by our side and stuff, but we heard enough of this ruined my family.
Well, we had two beautiful boys.
And we had two beautiful boys that we knew that this is either going to make or break them too.
It would destroy their whole life.
They're old enough to remember. And
for sure.
Yep.
So Jess, I remember a conversation with you about walking out of that hospital. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of a moment where you realized there was nothing for you to carry out of that hospital. Like you went in pregnant and you watched all these other women walking out, people putting their babies in the back of the car, watching these families leave with exactly what they came into the hospital. They went in with a purpose. They came out with, and yet you guys were walking out without Oaklyn. And that moment, it kind of was like a switch for you of, this can't happen to other people. This can't happen to other mothers or other families. Like this experience is so painful that I am going to do whatever. And maybe it didn't happen in that moment, but I remember you saying that. And that's kind of what.
I feel like that was like the first seed for the Oaklyn Foundation.
It was.
You didn't know.
It was.
Kind of like the doctor coming in and talking to us. You probably didn't know at the time.
It started already when they, it's so awful. Like they keep telling you, okay, like we chose to have an autopsy for Oaklyn because we wanted to make sure that our boys were going to be okay. We didn't know if this was a genetic thing, and then they'd be wrestling on the floor and like,
well, we wanted to know what happened.
Yeah. And at that time in our life, we were like, it's crazy. And I talked to a lot of people that feel this way. Like we'll have more kids. Mm-hmm. We're going to have another baby. So I want to know if that baby's going to be okay. And so leaving that NICU after like saying, okay, one more hour, you finally walk out and you go down to like the postpartum floor, where they have like all like the bistro and like all the moms are happy and the dads are, on cloud nine. And they put us down there and we have a dragonfly on our door. So, clearly we don't have a baby.
That's what they do?
Yeah.
Well, and who knows what that means? I mean, maybe
at the time I didn't know what that means, but I knew that the thing on our door, nobody else had.
We're still in with the general population though. Like this is, I went to the bistro to get some food and I met a high school friend that I hadn't seen since high school and they just had a baby, and like, talk about awkward. I mean, cause how terrible for him to, they're excited. They just had a baby and have to ask me and me say, well, ours passed away, like that shouldn't, for both of us, for neither one of us, that shouldn't happen.
Right.
So I think that was another thing that we had talked about.
Yeah.
I mean, I know.
And we were sitting in there and like, I was waiting for this nurse to come check me out one more time, and you could hear babies crying. And I was like, get me out of here. Get me out of here now. Yeah. And the nurse came in and I'm like, I need to go. Like, you need to get me out of here. And she was like, okay, you've had other kids, so I think we're good. Why don't you just leave and call us if you have any problems? But yeah, it was going, down the same elevator I went down with my boys. It was, walking with a diaper bag and, this empty car seat and stuff. And you go down to the lobby and there sat a mom with a baby and she's holding it in the wheelchair, just like you see in the movies, and there she's just, on cloud nine, and I'm sitting there just an absolute mess, waiting for you to pull up with the car. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I knew that something had to change, but it's just awful. Mom shouldn't have to go through that.
No, that whole process sounds horrific.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so sorry that you two had to go through that, because that just gives me this, I want to kick into action. Yeah. What do we got to do? How can we fix that for future moms? Because that is not okay.
Yep.
And until someone says, hey, that's not okay. It's just, they don't know, but they don't know, they don't, And so we're 42 minutes in, which I want to we're going to extend this just another 10 minutes for the listeners. So this is going to be an extended, because
maybe there's got to be a part 2.
Yes, there can be. And then I'm just going to make sure in all the show notes and everything that we really expand and expound on the Oaklyn Foundation, because it's such a beautiful thing how that doctor spoke into your life that day is exactly what happened when you referred to him. And I think about all the wonderful things you're doing now. If you can just go through briefly. I know that's going to be super hard. But when I look at the things you guys do, so the Oaklyn Foundation, you have the Wade Bears.
Yep.
So the Wade Bears and care packages, and you have location kits and angel outfits, and you're throwing events to raise money. And the event that you're doing is such a beautiful event. So if you can just talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we found, much like a lot of people that go through trauma, you need to talk about it, and your child that passed deserves to be talked about and honored every day. And what we found is the more that we talked about her, the more joy and excitement. And it became easier to talk about her. And so we do a lot. And she's talked about just as much as our boys at home.
That's right. But we found out that was not the norm, that people were not doing that.
Right away we found that. And I started to see these women who had babies 30, 40, 50 years ago that had never talked about them, and their families didn't even know that they had this baby, and they were going to take it to the grave with them. And it's like, no, we need to talk about it. And the minute that they would say their name, their shoulders relaxed. And tears would just flow. And it's like they waited their whole life to be able to share their child with someone else. And so that's how the Oaklyn Foundation was started. And that's our mission, is to break the stigma of throwing it in the closet and not talking about it. Bringing together a community of lost mamas that can share all of the stories, the good, bad, and the ugly, and have a community that they can rally around. And that it's never going to heal your heart, but it sure helps to just mend it a little bit. In the process.
And the bears, I love that, because I've been able to bless someone with a Wade Bear. And explain what you do.
So we received our Oaklyn Bear the day of Oaklyn's funeral, actually.
Yep.
And long story short, we ended up taking over the rights to these bears. A nonprofit had closed their doors. And so they weigh the exact same as the child that passed. We can do them anywhere from under a half pound to around 9.5 is about as big as I like to go. But we signed a big contract with Stanford. So now every mom that leaves the hospital leaves with a weighted bear in their hands, so they don't have to leave empty-handed.
Which is it's like a stuffed animal that has, you put
so we fill it. Yep. We fill them out, and we saw what it did.
Soothing lavender. I mean, it's not just a bear.
It's not just a bear. No, these are loved on. They're preyed on. I throw my heart and soul into these, and they have, I think, is the reason why our oldest son was able to heal. I mean, so we're camping, and we have Oaklyn Bear.
He's still sleeping.
Yeah, she's there with us.
And they call her Oaklyn. They don't say the Oaklyn Bear. I mean, that's her. Our other son has a blanket that, so blanket, she's very much still a part of their lives.
And that's how everyone should be able to do it.
Yeah. And it just about brings a tear to my eye every time that they talk about her like that. And it's just, talk about your situations, talk about your stories, talk about your pain, talk about your suffering, because other people will be encouraged through it.
Yeah, you don't know what kind of prison someone else is living in. Mm-hmm. And by sharing your story, it could break them free of the chains that are holding them down. And
yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah.
Keep going, because I can't talk right now.
But that's what it's all about. It's just,
we've just found so many different times that we have been rewarded we've messed up a ton of stuff. Don't hear me wrong, but like rewarded in
God has
being
blessed us.
Being open with our story and being an open book, as you call it, even though you're more of an open book than me. I'm like kind of a half closed, half open book. But there's power, because life is hard. You maybe you won't lose a child, but you'll experience something very difficult that'll rock your life or rock your marriage if you haven't already. Brace yourself, and people need to hear other people's story to know that they're not alone.
Yeah.
And Heather, you mentioned it earlier, like suicide rates, depression rates, anxiety rates are through the roof right now because of all the isolation and
marriage rates,
social media. Yeah.
60% of marriages fail after the loss of a child.
I thought it was higher than that, but whatever. So, okay. So let's just call it 60%. I mean, that's scary stuff. And we know that 50% of first time marriages end in divorce, even without a child that passed away. So
think about that. you're not only losing a child, you're now losing your spouse. Your family is now broken apart. I mean, there's so much more trauma
And it trickles.
so much more pain.
Your kids then are going to see an unhealthy marriage, and they probably are going to enter into their own unhealthy,
They're repeating the cycle.
Yeah.
What I've heard, this is such a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing all that you have. I mean, this has turned into a beautiful marriage. You're a pastor.
Yeah.
You're
Crazy.
speaking into people's lives every single, I just love calling you Pastor Travis.
Oh, Pastor T.
Pastor T. I haven't been able to see you behind the pulpit yet, but I'm excited to see that happen. Because what a blessing that God has. I mean, you're living in the Spirit, speaking into everyone's lives daily now. Like he has transformed the Travis, that Travis into this Travis. And it's a beautiful transformation. And then, I mean, your heart behind the Bears and the foundation and the way you're speaking into these women's lives and opening up a world they didn't even know existed. Yeah. To watch the two of you and the mom, like the mom, I mean, there's something there, right? They always say that it's you, this baby is a part of you physically. There is that connection that is something that is unbearable to break or to not have there. So when you lose a child, so through the event, how you honor these women by this annual fundraising event that you do, you have the moms who have lost children actually walk the runway. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's my favorite event. So we put on a lot of events throughout the year, but Beauty and Babes is my favorite. So we have it coming up again April 2nd. And we're just signing papers to have it out at Emerald Pines Barn. And we have all moms who have lost our models. And we have them closed in local boutiques. And it's a runway show. But it's a chance for these moms to gather. And it is so beautiful. So they'll be up and they get their hair and makeup done. And they're just sitting together and they're just talking about their loss. And it's really beautiful. And they have made some of the best friends within this community. And it's really cool to witness.
The connection. It's a family.
For sure.
When you've gone through something and you can relate. And
Yep. Yeah. Oakland's story is, it's sad. We have our hard days too, but I would not change a single thing about it because she has changed the world in a matter of 10 hours of being born. And I'm the lucky one that gets to live out her legacy every day. And I always say it's going to be the most beautiful thing when I get to see her again. And I can't wait for that. But until then, I'm just going to keep telling the world all about her.
Oh.
Yeah, but for those of you listening out there, I think it's important to note that those going through those details that you heard in the first 20 minutes or so were particularly painful for me. It's not easy. So you have to push through the hard of telling your story. And I don't think it ever, depending on what happened in the circumstances and what your past is like, it'll probably never get super easy to tell your story. But just know that somebody out there is listening to that, and somebody out there needs to hear that, and somebody else is walking a similar path and is going to be encouraged by your perseverance through difficult times. So I just wanted to mention that because those details from the first part of the podcast were particularly difficult to recall. I don't like to go down memory lane, if you will, that particular memory lane very often. But I know that there's a great reward every time that you do that. And you don't have to tell the whole story every time. Sometimes we just tell a little bit of it, but Heather opened the choke and pulled the cord for the whole story. So you got the whole story today. But there's reward, and hope is never far off.
Yeah. I really appreciate you sharing the whole story. Because I mean, whenever I have to go back into my dark closet,
right.
The wounds, man, it is hard, but it is so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's the beauty that comes out of sharing and building a community around your
it's your story.
It's your story. Thank you for continuing to just live Oakland's legacy, you guys.
Thank you for having
us. Thanks for having us.
This was so fun.
Thank you. I love you guys so much.
Oh, we love you
too.
You're stuck with us for life.
Forever, yes. Well,
thanks for doing what you do.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I will make sure to post everything there is to know about the Remmes and the Oaklyn Foundation. And have a wonderful day.